Okay, here we all are together and ready to discuss the wonderful book 10,000 Things with the author Robert Saltzman present, and we can begin. Well, I'll start. Somebody needs to mute because their feedback is coming right back into the recording for everybody. I find the book very thought-provoking, and two comments. One is I love the way you sort of throw out a lot of assumptions that are being made by religions and other so-called spiritual practices. And you say, well, how the hell do we know this? And we really don't. So what are we making up here? That's number one. And then the other one is you've introduced some ideas to me that have really got my mind going and thinking about things. And the other night I was sitting here reading on my Samsung cell phone in the chair before dinner, and I was verbally arguing with you. I was going, well, wait a minute. And my wife goes, gosh, you're arguing with that book. And I said, yeah. So that's about how engaged I've been with it.
That's really nice.
There you
go. I've done the same thing myself. I mean, I've walked around talking to myself about myself, arguing with myself. So I can easily. Whoa! What happened here? Where are you?
We're here.
Okay. I'm having a hard time technically today for some reason. Usually I can deal with this. Okay, that might be better.
Well, I had just the opposite experience, which is that I couldn't argue with anything that you said. And then I felt bad because there was Sky arguing with everything. And so I felt like I was just a pussy or something, just listening and taking everything you said. So I do want to read you my favorite sentence. Can I read you the favorite sentence in the book?
I would adore hearing that.
Okay. And it's on page 75 for other people that have the book. And I've shared it with the Headless folks. That's our Headless Way folks. So they've heard this before. It's 3 sentences. You believe the question that I have acquired some extraordinary power of simply observing so that I stand apart from pain and loss and suffer less than you do. But that's backwards. I have no way of avoiding pain or anything else I feel, and I know it. I feel what I feel, and what I feel is me. Without feelings, there is no I, and without I, there are no feelings. And we had a lot of debate about that little paragraph. So I don't know. To me, it's the kernel of the book. Like you don't try to get rid of the I. Anyhow.
Okay. Thank you so much for saying that. That's really a central point, I think. Let me just say something about that. I never was really part of a spirituality scene. It's a long story, but when I arrived in this, which was, I think, 2010, I was kind of shocked by the credulity and the over-respect for these 20th century figures who had their dogma, and the way that dogma was just taken as fact without anyone deeply questioning it. I don't mean that it wasn't being questioned, scientists and all of these other people, but they were put down by the spirituality people. They were lesser than, or somehow the scientists were confused, but we know the truth. And I thought, this is absurd. I mean, Nisargadatta was a guy, obvious. And he's being treated as if every word that ever came out of his mouth was absolute truth. And so this nonsense of non-duality is a misunderstanding. It's not that non-duality is not, it's not that that doesn't apply to our situation. It does, but it doesn't define it. I mean, there actually are people, no matter what anybody thinks about it. And we people have needs. We have needs, and we have emotions, and we have love affairs, all of this. And to just wipe all of that out as meaningless, to me, comes from fear. You're just afraid to really live. So you want to get this intellectual idea, no one really exists, and Hitler didn't really kill any Jews because there weren't any Jews. Okay. So that is the kernel of the book. You put your finger on it right there. We actually exist, and we have to do something with that. In my opinion, that's my view.
Okay, Robert, can I ask something? Are you guys hearing me? This is David from Houston.
Yes.
Okay. So, Robert, you said some time ago, you said there is a content of awareness, and there was awareness, and you would not put it like that again, that awareness is a holder or room for arising. If there's no objects, there's no awareness. So you change your standpoint somewhere over the years. Now, the thing is, I think you also went on to Krishnamurti on this objectless awareness. Objectless awareness or direct perception. Direct perception of what is and conceptualization. So there is direct perception where you do not know what anything is. And then gradually you start conceiving what that is. So my point, to boil it down, is there a choiceless awareness that is always there, that is incomprehensible, indefinable, indescribable, that is always there? You call it not knowing. Please carry on. Could you comment on that?
Oh, Robert, unmute.
Get the hang of this. David, I'm not quite sure what you're asking. Could you put it in the form of a question?
Okay. So Advaita says one of their statements is that choiceless awareness is. It exists even while dreaming, while waking, during deep sleep. There is objectless awareness that cannot be known by the waking mind, so to speak. Now, this direct awareness or direct perception exists at all moments, but we overlay layers of concepts on it. My impression was that you were saying there were no such thing as objectless awareness. And once the object goes, awareness goes. Is that a correct interpretation?
Saying that there's no such thing as objectiveless awareness. I'm saying that for me, there isn't. For you, there may be. But if there is for you, I'm not going to believe that simply because you say it. People have all kinds of religious ideas. And Krishna Menon was raised in a long tradition where this was passed down, and the infants were taught to respect these old yogis, etc. This has tremendous authority, and I don't bow to authority. I'm dealing with my own experience, and that's all. And I do not know anything about deep sleep. Nothing. Zero. Personally, if you have an experience of objectiveless awareness that's convincing to you, and you tell me that, I will respect that. I won't tell you that doesn't exist, but I won't believe you.
Robert, it's not so much a question about believing. It's a direct perception right now. before there's any conceptual overlay, it's a timeless awareness. It's an awareness between two thoughts, two feelings, two sensations, two perceptions. You already are in that choiceless or direct perception or non-objective. It's not a belief, it's right now.
Yes, okay, I get that. I don't disagree with that. But where I seem to see this differently from a lot of people is that I don't think it's the same awareness every time. See, the idea in Vedanta is there's this field of awareness, and it's the only thing that's real. The objects that appear within that awareness or projected on that movie screen or whatever the metaphor may be, they're not real. They're mythia. They're just relatively real, whereas the awareness has always existed, will always exist. It's permanent and unchanging. That's Vedanta. I don't see it that way. I'm not saying it's wrong. That's not my experience. It's true that there is this awareness, but is this really the same awareness that I had when I was 1 year old? I really can't say that. In fact, I doubt it, but I could be wrong in doubting it. I don't know, but I have no basis for believing in this two-stage setup. There's reality and then there's this dream. See, that's a trope out of Advaita, and that's not how I experience this aliveness, this awakeness. That I call it this aliveness or this awakeness. I have no idea if anything is permanent. How could I? Where would I get that idea?
Thank you. I think what happened here is that we try to conceptualize that awareness. And that, I think, is where the Buddha deconstructed that. A lot of people believe Brahman is a concept. Brahman is not a concept. Brahman is indefinable, indescribable. And the Buddha took that and he said, yes, it's not a concept. And he preferred to use shunyata, emptiness, so to speak. But it's the same experience. It's a direct, non-conceptual experience. That's all I can say, Robert. And it's not that anything lives forever or there's some permanence. You don't know. You don't know what it is. And you said that in your work somewhere. Thank you.
Let me comment on that, and then we'll go on. I don't know anything about any of this. I really don't. Oh, I think that what I'm trying to say is a little hard to understand to the depths of it, because it has nothing to do with any concepts. All of this, what the Buddha said, I don't ever think about that. It's not that I've never thought about it. I've read the same books that we all have. They just don't mean anything to me at all. I don't care what the Buddha said about anything. It means nothing to me. I have this moment. What I'm doing right now is the only thing that I care about. It's the only thing that exists for me. In the next moment, I may have a heart attack, and if I do, I will be dealing with that, not with what the Buddha said. In between, there's this seeking that can take place in your mind where you say, this experience isn't good enough. If I could understand better what the Buddha was really getting at, or if I could get beyond concepts, then it would be satisfactory. But for me, everything is satisfactory because there is no alternative. Yes, there may be this great state that all these jnanis and realized beings are pointing to, but I'm not experiencing it. I'm experiencing looking at this screen, speaking with you in a virtual way, and that's all I'm doing. It's all I can do. I don't know if it's hard to understand because it's too fucking simple.
Hey, Robert, I'd like to share a part of the book that I really liked. Is that okay? So,
Yeah.
I love the part. It's actually, I'll just read it. It says, one does not get to choose anything, I am saying, neither joy nor anything else. In this moment, things are as they are and cannot be different. So when there is joy, it comes not by means of any how, but because joy may arise spontaneously under the strangest circumstances in ways that one might never imagine. This moment unfolds as it must, and this moment is you. I know this is hard to understand. Our early and continuing conditioning as persons makes it hard to understand. Beautiful, beautiful paragraph. And then you tell the story, which is about the master who is beating the pot when his followers come up and see him in disarray, and then he responds, well, my wife just died and I'm beating a pot. And the reason that story means so much to me is that basically it's saying yes to everything. It's like I don't have to freaking try and be anything other than I'm not. And if there's pain, there's pain. If there's joy, there's joy, and let it be, as the Beatles say. Yeah? So anyway, great book, and thank you for coming to this meeting. I'm really stoked.
Oh, Matthew, thank you so much for that. That's really beautiful to hear that. And that's really the essence. Let me give you an example of that. Years ago, I was having some vision problems, so I went to get my eyes tested, and the doc told me, at the end, examined me, and he said, you may have a problem. You may be going blind in your left eye. Well, I went out, I left, paid, and went out into the parking lot and realized I had this huge grin on my face, and I was feeling really happy. And it just struck me as so incongruous. I went, what the fuck is this? Well, later I understood, I think, this is my theory anyway, he had reminded me of mortality, of my mortality, which even though people try to avoid that, it's the best thing that can happen to you. That's where all the joy is. Otherwise, if this just went on forever, it would be boring. There wouldn't be any passion in it at all. It would just be boring. What a life, 10 million years? I mean, you know. So that's how I understood that. And I don't try to avoid anything. I've got to tell you that. I just take my licking when it comes, and if there's something I can do to have fun, I go for it. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's not, as soon as I sound like I'm preaching shit, but I'm sorry. As soon as we are willing to just be with whatever appears, everything opens up, because that's what you have to do anyway. Now you're just not resisting it. And so everything just flows. And it's not like I have this big secret and no one else. Everybody really knows this. Everybody really knows this. At least I think all of us that are at this meeting really know this, that you really have no choice and things are as they are, and you didn't ask to be born or what family to be born into or what body you would have or what education would happen. And so all we have is this. Yeah, I do feel like I'm preaching. Someone else talk.
No, you're not preaching, man. I liked it. You know, it's like when that anger comes up, before there used to be a sense of the anger's there, and now I need to do something to take care of that anger, to get rid of it. And I would read all my Wayne Dyer books, and they were helpful at the time. But now it's like that anger comes up, right? And it's just like, so there's freaking anger. So what? let it be, you know. And it's like I don't have to do anything, and I'm not doing anything anyway. It's just coming and going. It's a real stress reliever. So.
Well, anger may be appropriate. Anger may be appropriate. These are these fixed ideas that I would just like to see all of that go away, and we'd just be natural. I mean, anger is a human emotion that took countless years to evolve. It's hardwired into our brains. It's not a question of getting over it. It's a question of feeling it. And when you feel it and don't oppose it, and you know what it is, it will change into something else. It has to. This is true of everything, positive and negative. It's always flowing. It's only when we cling to, we want to be good. You know, oh, I can't feel anger. You know, I'm spiritual. You know, that's really what screws us up, in my view. It's the wanting to be something that you aren't. It's like driving in. It's like pinning a butterfly to the board. You know, you just kill it. Yeah.
Well, here's something that fits right in with what you said, Robert. In reading your book, I've been wanting to actually experience no free will, and I haven't been able to do it. For me, I think the whole concept of free will is a conundrum. It's full of paradox. I do, as a human being, I make choices all the time. My computer flakes out on me, and I decide just to give it up or to try to fix it. My dog makes choices. I look at him, and he'll be going down the trail, and he'll stop, and he'll look one way, and he'll go, he'll look another way, and I'm pretty sure he's making a choice there. So for me, I just can't fit into this thing of no choice and no free will, and I'm struggling to get there. So what do you do with that?
Well, before I comment, I just want to express my affection for all of you people. I see these little boxes, and I know each one of those represents an entire universe. This is really very beautiful. Thank you so much for honoring me in this way, to be interested in the book and care what I have to say. It's really very, very touching. Okay, free will. It's not a paradox. It really isn't. It feels like a paradox if you try to understand it. This is something. Let me say this about it. Suppose your computer goes on the fritz and you have to make a decision, as you said. Do I take this to the repair shop, or maybe it's 4 years old, maybe I'll just take it to the recycle and buy a new one. And there's this dithering, and the dithering might go on for hours. And the dithering will involve childhood guilt about money and finance and everything. It's just a mess, okay? And then after all the dithering, you make a decision. I have decided. I am the decider, okay? And your decision is whatever it is. That decision is not a decision, it's an expression of you. It's not the same thing. You really had no choice. A different person would make a different decision, clearly. And so it's just myself unfolding. And the dithering is this add-on. It's the little homunculus, I say, in the brain here that we imagine that's real, and it starts to whip us. Oh, you're not good enough. And what if you buy a new computer and then the car breaks down? You know, this is an endless form of grief and self-punishment. And when I say I'm awake and I know it, I know that it really pisses people off. When I say I'm awake and I know it, what I mean is I don't need to indulge in that. It just doesn't happen. I make decisions in the same way anyone else does, but I don't agonize over them. I just do what I think I have to do. And I have no choice. That's what I have to do.
So
Let me tell you a story about that. You know this one. This is the story of the frog and the scorpion. Anybody who doesn't know that? Okay. Julio. Hi. Thank you for being here. Barcelona? Oh, beautiful. I always wanted to go there. Maybe one of these days. So the scorpion goes to the frog and says, look, I need to get to the other side of the river. I really need it. Would you carry me over there? And the frog says, oh, no, I'm not going to let you on my back. And the scorpion says, please, I just want to cross the river. The frog says, if I let you on my back, you'll sting me and I'll die. Well, the scorpion says, look, carry me across the river. I'm not going to sting you when we're halfway across the river. Yeah, you'll die, but so will I. We'll both drown. It makes sense. So the frog says, all right, you've convinced me. They start out, they get about halfway across the river, and the scorpion stings the frog several times, and the frog is dying. And he says, are you crazy? Now we're both going to die. Why did you do this? And the scorpion looks at the frog and he says, that's my nature. That's what I say about Robert. The poor guy just has to do whatever he has to do.
okay, all right. This is going to lapse into the whole territory of self-improvement. Okay, say I'm with my wife, I'm in a bad mood. These kind of things stand out because I dearly love my wife. We've been married 30 years. I'm in a bad mood and I start treating her like a real asshole. And she gets a frown on her face or whatever and responds. And a voice inside of me says, I can say, well, I am what I am. I'm just an asshole. Or a voice in myself says, I could do this better. I could do this better. And I make a decision. I will myself to say some things that are kinder. Now, that to me sounds like a process in which I don't say I am what I am and that's all that I am. And I go beyond that and I make a decision and I change my behavior. So how does that fit in?
Well, there may be a level on which someone has to do that. This is not an absolute. You see, we don't need to make this into it's not a matrix with fixed rules. We're humans. This is, we're animals. If I rag on someone I love, I hope I have the grace to say to the person, not I am the way I am, but I'm so sorry I did that. I must have been upset about something. Otherwise, I never would have taken this out on you. Will you please forgive me? That would be the best thing to say, right? I don't think I have to learn that. I don't think so, but who knows? I may be embarrassed. The thing is that I see your wife was here. There she is. Hi. You two have been, there she is. You two have been together for a long time. So apparently, you have something that's working out. And I don't think there's any need to really analyze it. If you screw up, you screw up. It's not so much I am what I am, so you can't criticize me. It's I am what I am, and I'm sorry that hurt you. That'd be a more open. Yeah, okay.
What is that free will?
But don't you think we should just wake up from this dream of being a separate person, separate from the flow or the stream of consciousness, as you put it, and then right decision or appropriate decisions would be made. But seeing, in my context, seeing first and then action comes in after, this clear perception or this awakening, as you call it.
Is that your experience? That you experience this in stages?
No. There is an awakening. As you put it, Robert, you had your awakening. You put it in your book,
Okay.
right? And then actions follow.
Yes, behavior changes when your understanding of myself changes. When you understand that you are not that if I understand that you and I are now talking, David, and now there's something new has come into existence that didn't exist before we engaged in this conversation. So now Robert is also David at this moment. Not entirely, but there's no easy way to draw a boundary for me in this moment between you and me. Then my behavior changes. If you are in this, what I would call hypnotic trance, where you think I'm in this fragile body and the rest of the world is out there and they're all trying to get me or get my money or whatever the fear is, that's a whole different form of behavior. Yes, I don't know if that responded to what you're saying at all.
Oh, yes, correct, yes.
So I think most of us who are here are in an awakened state. But I think we have been trained culturally to imagine that can't be it, because it was this guy in the 19th century or whatever who was really awakened, and I have to figure out everything this guy ever said, and then I'll be awakened or whatever. It's not like that. That's the polar opposite of what I mean when I say awake. Awake is this. That's all it is. It's just, what else could it be? I'm alive. Yes, it's as awake as it gets. Tomorrow I might be underground, and then that's how it goes. So,
Robert,
let me just say one more word. Forgive me. Maybe it's because I'm an old guy now. Probably has something to do with it. But I am not going to waste these precious, beautiful moments seeking something in the future that I may not never even get to experience. That'll just be a fantasy anyway. When this is here, I can't tell you what a wonderful experience this is for me. I've never done anything like this before. There's all these faces on the screen. I mean, I've given talks in an audience of living people. This is bizarre, man. It's just I'm an old guy and I'm in the 21st century. It's kind of blowing my mind, But that's what I mean by awake. I cut someone off. I'm so sorry.
Hey, Robert, how old?
no, I just wanted to say something about you had mentioned that. Well, first, I never was a seeker per se, and didn't have a lot of information about any tradition, but it just so happened that I became very much aware or remembered that I can't find an I here. I can't find a person here, and which doesn't devalue anything. It's just that in direct experience, I can't find that, and I can't find that in others. But if anything, it allows for more value. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, is that Beth? Was that Beth?
No, it's Sequoia. It's Sequoia.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a question of what you mean by I. When you say I can't find an I think it's a question of what you mean by I. If you mean some fixed, unchanging myself, I can't find that either.
Yeah.
But when I meet people, I'm aware that they have an essence each one that's not the same as the next one.
Yes.
And I'm going to feel that the next time I meet them. Unless some radical change takes place. See, this is exactly what I'm trying to get at in the 10,000 Things book. All these definitions of the real self that I know about in spirituality, except for very few, require us to deny our direct experience. In my direct experience, one person is not the same as another. They just aren't. And if I acted that way towards them, I never could have done my work as a psychotherapist. I would have been a really bad psychotherapist. If some person who's chronically depressed, for example, who's chronically depressed, comes in for an hour of therapy, and I've just dealt with somebody who's really manic and happy, and I treat them both the same. That's violent, actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that doesn't mean that your experience isn't valid. I'm not saying that. If you define the self in a certain way, then there is no myself. There's only this. And that's what the non-duality teachers do. They get up on a stage and they say, there is only this. And that's supposed to take care of the matter. Oh, okay, that solves everything. Well, it doesn't for me. Never has. Still doesn't. One of the things that's strange about saying I'm awake, some people think that's some kind of final state. It isn't. I'm growing and changing just like any other living being, and my understanding of things is changing constantly, and my idea of myself is changing. But I don't imagine that Robert does not exist in any way at all. And I don't think my friends would say that. I have friends who will say, Robert, you're the guy I want to come to when I'm really puzzled about, and then there'll be this emotional story. My wife, my child, I've had that since childhood. That's part of Robert. I'm not going to erase it because it's inconvenient or, yeah. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah. This experience of that is like you say, it's not fixed. It's not congealed into a concrete thing for either myself or for others. It's much more fluid than that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily have a definition or.
Yes, except you don't expect me to suddenly become a psychopathic murderer. I mean, so that's all I'm getting at. There's something that we bring with us that you can call myself, except we just don't know what it is. But
yes,
see, this is this confusion that I'm trying to point out. To say I don't know what something is not the same as saying it doesn't exist at all. Those are two separate understandings. Doesn't exist at all is a unicorn, except it exists as a mental picture, but there's no actual animal called a unicorn. It doesn't exist in the world.
Yes, I understand that as you mentioned, that people bring with them what I would term an essence, I guess, and that's really brought home to me in when people pass away or an animal passes away, and that essence of who they were can be called up in any moment, and it comes up as a sensation, a full body sensation, not just a memory, and it's different for every single person, alive or deceased. That essence is always a tangible thing, and that's all I know of what anybody is that that essence.
Okay, but David was referring before to this kind of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta way of viewing this matter. And in that understanding, these things that I'm calling the essence, they call those the vasanas. And you're supposed to get rid of those so that you can experience pure nothingness or emptiness. See, the idea is I'm going to purge myself, exhaust all my karma, or whatever the idea may be. I just feel that's a very long project. I don't think I've really got the time to make that happen.
Yeah, I don't know anything of any.
So many women, so little time.
May I jump into this? Can you guys hear me?
Yes,
Yes, this is Jurek. I'm from Toronto. I think when I tuned in the first time, my video was turned off, so you couldn't see me. So I will reintroduce myself again to you guys. And just a little quick comment on this thing that you're talking about, which is unknowing, not knowing. This is very rare that I hear anybody fully admitting this honestly as you do, and I think that's, to me, is really the bottom line in all of this. There's all these experiences, all this stuff going on, and we tried our best to talk about it somehow. We use a lot of concept, but at the end of the day, really nobody really knows. We don't know. Yeah, and that's beautiful. That's really, when that opens up, I feel this not knowing opens up a lot of doors. The conceptual stuff quietens down, and the living, the tasting, the touching, the seeing becomes so much more vibrant. And I think this is what we're talking about here. At least I feel that's what you're talking about, that the moment to moment, that the immediacy of this becomes apparent, right? Now, again, we can go about it once again and slap more labels on it. We could call it non-duality or awakening, but it doesn't matter. Who cares what it is you call it? It's just what it is. It's the immediacy of this, right? This is what we always been trying to get to that, right? So, for my money, I mean, this is probably one of the best ways is, this honest, direct approach that you've done, Robert, which is just to say, I don't really know. I don't really know what this is, but this is. I can see this. I can taste this. I can experience this. I just don't know what this is, and that's, to me, is just simple and beautiful and honest, and that's really about it, And yeah, carry on.
Thank you, Eric. That's really beautiful. I know you maybe the others don't know. You've been quoting me in your group. You have a non-duality Toronto. Yes.
Yes, correct.
And you've quoted my words there a few times, and it's caused quite a bit of controversy. I see a lot of people don't like the idea that Robert can say I'm awake and I don't know. They think it has to be one way or the other.
Correct. This is a complete misunderstanding, and that's why I was really taken by your writings and your speaking, because there's so much misunderstanding about this topic, and I think the general public tends to cling on to some sense of knowing. This is really the default mechanism of the brain. He really wants to grasp onto the labels and definitions and concepts, this or the other. It has to be somehow sorted out in black and white. It cannot be in this free fall. I have no idea what this is, where we're going. We don't know. Nobody knows what this is all about. We have no fucking idea, and yet nobody wants to admit to that. Really, we don't. So to me, this approach is very refreshing. And once all this damn posturing drops, once you admit to yourself that you don't know, really, I mean, the perception changes so dramatically, right? The immediacy of everything. Yes, it's like a child, This is it. Everything is anew once again. So it's beautiful, right? And yet there's this addiction to conceptual thinking, right? It always comes back again and again and again. There is insistence, for some reason, at least I see it, I see it on a social media, this exchange of concepts. It has to be defined one way or the other, right? And people will fall for these definitions again and again, in favor of the not knowing. Yeah. So, yes, congratulations, Robert. Thank you, and yes, I appreciate your bravery. Actually, that's very brave, in fact, to throw it all away and stand naked and say, I don't know. I think it's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
What else can I say? I mean, this is just, it's so simple, right? It's like, it's just going back to your childhood experience, when we're born, You're not born with any of this knowledge, right?
Yes. Yurik, I think in my observation as a psychologist, a psychotherapist, I got to know a lot of people intimately in ways that socially, usually we don't get to know people. Usually we only get to know people intimately if there's a love affair or some very close friendship. Doing psychotherapy is really interesting because you might see 8 people in a day, and it's like reading one chapter out of this novel and you put it away and open the next one, and it could be a completely different book. And after a while, you learn that people have different capacities. I think some people are born with much more tolerance for ambivalence and doubt. And other people really need to have things defined very clearly. And that's not chosen. That's just the way we are. It's just like some people are Republicans and other people are Democrats. No one really chooses that. You have your need. The Republicans are people who need...
Join this meeting.
Okay.
Hello, Dennis. You just arrived.
Just made it, yeah.
What time is it there? It must be an ungodly hour.
No, it's fine. It's just sunrise is happening. It's 6 o'clock.
Oh, nice. Tomorrow, you're in our tomorrow, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
No. Well, you already know what's going to happen.
I just made it, yeah. Sorry to interrupt. You were talking.
Yeah, Robert.
I was just doing a little psychological analysis here. I think I was going into politics. This has been studied a lot. People who are Republicans score much higher on the disgust scale. They're much more easily disgusted by things, and they want a lot of order. People who are Democrats feel troubled by authority, and they don't want a lot of order. They want less order. No one chooses that. It's just the way you're born. And I think the same thing applies to what Yurik was talking about. Some people have to know. They just have to have this. These are my core values. My core value is the Buddha was right. And all I have to do is follow this path. I'll do the noble, I'll learn the noble truths. I'll do the Eightfold Noble Path every day. I'll never masturbate or whatever, drink too much, whatever. And if I can just do that for 38 years or 38 lifetimes, eventually I will be like the Buddha. And what I'm saying is You're like the Buddha right now. You really are. And if there's something that makes you think you aren't, that is a lie. Because the Buddha was just like you or me, exactly. It's just a guy. And he was a smart guy. He came up with some great ideas, but he didn't become non-human just because he had some great ideas. It's not like that. I have people who are trying to put me on a pedestal, and I'm just like this ordinary cat. That's what they did to the Buddha, except a millionfold. He's on this pedestal that's so out of sight that you will never get there. You'll end up bleeding from the fingernails trying to climb up on this thing and transcend yourself, and you never will. It's not going to happen. And so if you believe in that, self-improvement was the question earlier. If you believe in that, you have an endless project, and you won't laugh a lot. You just won't. You'll be too serious. Life is very serious. You're going to get ill and die, and you won't be here anymore. And
people love projects. I mean, look around. Look at your friends. Look at all these people. We're all working on projects. So, hey, maybe this is part of being awake.
So Sky, the projects that I like are projects that actually can be accomplished. What happens in spirituality is you make you're presented with a project. It's like it's one of the fairy tales. I've forgotten which one now. It's an endless task. You'll never spin all the straw into gold or whatever it is. Sisyphus is pushing the rock up the hill, and just when you feel enlightened, your mother-in-law comes to stay for a week, and you're back to square one. It's endless. It's endless. So what I say is, you're going to die. Have a good time, please. And then if you want to be enlightened and you can smile while you're going about it, okay, it's fine. But if you are white knuckling trying to escape from your human animal primate being, that really seems difficult. I'm not doing it. Let's put it that way. I'm just not doing that one. And just about the seeker thing, I live in a town where the cathedral is the center of town. And a lot of my friends here are serious Catholics. And they believe what they believe. And they really work at it. And their everyday life is an attempt to work with that. And I'm not saying they're wrong, but I can't do that. I don't believe that some cat was born immaculate conception and God tortured his son so that humans, after countless humans on earth, it goes back for millennia. Then suddenly, 2,000 years ago, God says, this is fucked up. I think I need to kill my son and straighten everyone out. I can't get with that. It seems absurd to me. And that's also what Advaita Vedanta feels like to me. It's absurd. I don't mean that there's not something there, but it's not what we are. It just isn't. I've never met anyone who was like that. And I don't think these reputed teachers were like that. I really doubt it. I think they were misunderstood. And people made a religion out of something that was just what we're talking about now. And when Ulrich said you have to doubt, because if you don't, it's like nailing one foot in the ground and then you're just going around in circles around my belief, If it's fine to have a project, but don't make the project enlightenment. But for Christ's sake, I mean, come on, that's a terrible goal. It really is. just make it being, make my goal being. You have an actual chance to do that. It's within the realm.
Well, I'll be the devil's advocate. I mean, there's some people who believe that this urge to seek is built into our human animal, and there's a lot of biological evidence that because of our success on this planet, we've been seeking all kinds of stuff. I mean, we're getting so good at doing stuff, we'll destroy it through all our seeking and our ingenuity. And I'm just thinking that there's another point of view about this, and that seeking, going after the end of the rainbow is something that people like to do. And so I guess I'll add that if you can, I believe I can be awake. I can be awake and I can seek all kinds of things. And that's just part of my awakeness. And like you said, it's more fun to have fun doing it rather than making it some grinding process that's never going to end. But if I'm having fun seeking, what the hell? That's part of my awakeness.
Okay, when I say seeking, Sky, we may not be using that word the same way. What it means to me is not the ordinary process of life where I go out with my camera and hope to get a better photograph of some situation. I do that. I have this old cemetery where I like to work and nothing moves much, so I can keep trying to improve my interpretation of it. I'll do that with a great deal of energy. When I say seeking, I mean the kind of seeking that imagines an acquisition, as if there was actually this thing called enlightenment that you could put in a bucket and carry home with you and eat for dinner or something. The enlightenment is when all of that goes away. It's so clear, and you just are. That's what all the enlightened people say, but then everyone says, well, I want to be that way too. And you see that, you mentioned paradox before. If you want a paradox, that's a paradox. And so responding to you personally, there's nothing wrong with projects, but spiritual projects, it's like putting a barbed wire fence right down the middle of this open meadow. And you put the fence there, and then you say, how am I going to get over this fence where all the good grass is? I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not a preacher. I'm just talking a lot now, but
I think I get it.
I know you do.
Hi, Robert.
I just embarrassed myself.
Hi. I found your book so refreshing. I'm not even finished. And I remember one of the first sentences that you said about points of view. And then I find it refreshing because, yes, at one point I wanted to be whatever, enlightened, and then I will be like I will not be upset, and then I will get all these suggestions, and then your mind will be quiet, and you will not judge, and all of that stuff. And I realized that that's impossible. I mean, I can't do it. It's impossible. So I gave that up quite long ago. But your book was like if I think of a chain, like a love chain, it's like every time I have the encounter with a group like this, or it's like one of those opens up, and then yours really open a big, because it's like when I finished that chapter, I went downstairs and I thought, oh my God, this is delicious. I'm going to do the dishes and I'm going to be in that meeting, and that's it. I can go from this country to my family and have fun, and I can dance and I can walk, and that's it. And I can just, I think the mind and all the programming was putting something for me that is impossible to obtain. I can't do it. But then just being here and just listening to you and reading your book and from everyone, I said, wow, it's simple. I don't have to be better. I don't have to be whatever. this is it. I get upset sometimes, I get sad sometimes, but most of all, I'm really a happy person. And that's all. Just being here, that's it. So I wanted to say thank you for the simplicity and apparently complicated way. And then when the mind just tried to figure out the writing, what it did for me was just breaking one more of those things for my freedom. And for that, I thank you very much.
Angie, let's see if Angie, thank you so much for saying that. You made me very happy. Really, that's the idea of the book. That's it. That's all we got. That's all we have, in my view, in my experience, in my honest experience. That's what we have. And it could end at any moment. So while it's here, thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that we wrap this meeting up. We're getting close to 12:30, an hour and a half, that we wrap it up within the next 5 minutes. And then perhaps we can decide whether we want to have another meeting. And some of us are still reading the book. I'm only 2/3 of the way through, so maybe we can have another meeting the middle of January or something. That's an idea.
Hello, Robert. I wanted to say that my experience with the 10,000 Things was, for the first time, there was someone who was giving me permission to admit what I had suspected for many, many years in my so-called seeking. When that occurred, I've described it as the sense that I caught myself with my pants down. You know, what are you doing here? Everybody else can see it but you. And the result of the inquiry, I guess the self-inquiry, was that that this idea of attainment in and of itself indicated that right now wasn't good enough. And to hear someone say, "I'm awake and I know it," is in the tradition that I was in, that's a no-no. You don't do that. You don't get any more dana if you do that, you know, because you get pushed off. The freedom that occurred for me from the sort of sticky questioning and the self-observation, there was an observer that disappeared, and I felt as though I wasn't being constrained anymore from just being who I actually am, rather than what I thought I was supposed to be or possibly could be. You described it in a post about or someone did, about the frames being gone from around the picture. There's no frames. That was a lovely thing. The thoughts that arise and blow away, those understandings to me have taken a deep root and are very meaningful. You used the word natural earlier, and that's how it feels. It feels natural and not sticky anymore. You know, I'd like to say that this idea of not knowing, I don't believe one can have any sense of reality other than in a state of not knowing. You know, there was a great teacher, Bernie Glassman, who's still alive, that talks about that. And you know, this idea that we're going to go down the road and we can go like pigs to the slaughter, or with as much dignity and grace as we can muster, as Marianne Woodman said, is really what it's about. My life feels relaxed. It feels natural. It's not even a question of allowing things to come up or pushing things away. It is what it is. It's not without responsibility. It's not without a range of emotion or any of that. But I feel unencumbered by a critical observer anymore. You know, after 20 years Zen practice, I read your book and it stopped. and some of you have read some of my posts, I'm sure, on Facebook. And you know, I find myself occasionally looking over my shoulder at that guy and going, what's going on here? You know, what are you holding on to? And the idea of grasping for the rock that went over the edge of the cliff with you becomes quite apparent. I want to thank you deeply for writing that book, for sharing the personal experience that you had, for pointing out the ease and clarity with which someone like me can actually embrace life. It's changed my life profoundly, and I have to say it's for the better. I feel really good. I don't feel sticky. I feel free and spacious, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you.
Looks like he left for a second there.
I don't blame him.
So let me ask you guys, is there not a fear in not knowing? Isn't there, like, you know,
No.
what do people think about me? You know,
No,
I don't know.
you have to.
How do you overcome that fear?
You have to overcome that fear by resting in the present moment completely and getting rid of every past or future and just relying on your aliveness and spontaneous right now. And that's exceedingly difficult. Most people cannot rest in the present moment. They can't rely on their own spontaneous, and they can't even rest in their own presence because it's too uncomfortable. A lot of people aren't happy with what's surrounding them in their own presence and their aliveness. And when that happens, it forces them to either project into the imaginary world of the future or rely on the past, which when I examine my past, I find out my memory is really bad when I really look at it closely. And I can only look at it now. And I can only look at my present moment right now. And I can only look at the future right now. And the question you're asking is, you're saying it's impossible not to rest in the unknown. Well, I have a big fucking surprise for you. Robert is completely right. You have to stay in the present moment right now and rest in the unknown, because nobody knows what the fuck this is. We just know that it is. I may die of a heart attack in the next 5 minutes. I say that to people all the time, Robert, because I know it's true. And I also know what is true is that I don't know. And it's okay not to know. And that's the only way I can rest in my own spontaneous this moment. And that's what makes Robert's book so good, because basically what he's saying is throw everything out overboard and rest in your presence, rest in your aliveness, this moment, right now. In fact, as Robert's talking, as I'm talking this moment, that's what it really means. Most people do not ever understand that because they can't stay in their own moment of presence. That's why they call it the presence. Our presence is only in the present moment right now. And that's a very difficult thing for the mind to deal with, because the mind is trained in past, future relationships. Just like the guy in Britain that tuned in just a moment ago, it's tomorrow or yesterday for him, but it's right now. And for us, right now is right now. So it doesn't matter what time it is in the world, what time zone it is, it's right now. And to me, that's a beautiful thing. And I don't know what it is. I have no idea. You know, now is unknown. And that's a beautiful thing, because what you said, Sky, is when you have that argument and you realize you have a scope in the present moment, I have arguments with my wife. It gives me empathy, not just with myself, but with everybody around me. And that to me is so important, because, you know, and when I say empathy, I don't mean it being a bleeding heart all the time or anything like that. I mean the reality of that, you know, we're all in the same boat right now together. And because we're in that boat right now together, that creates empathy, you know. And to me, that you know, I met Robert through John Troy. And John Troy, I'm sorry he's not at this meeting today. He's a great guy too. But that's really your question, David. You know, you have to rest in the unknown. You have to rest in the present moment, and you don't need anything else but your own presence. And that's what you said, B, too. You know, you finally found somebody that said, hey, it's okay to rest in your own present right now, your spontaneousness, and this is it. And most people will go, what the fuck? This is it? This is it. But for some of us, that's a beautiful thing.
So, Robert, what we're talking about is the fear of not knowing, is, you know, the inherent or perceived fear of not knowing, you know, like what would people think about you? Is that a deterrent? And then David C. went on to go into the details and the mechanics of overcoming that barrier of wrestling.
Okay, let me just work backwards a little. David, thank you so much. It's great hearing your voice. We've been friends on private message and all that. Lovely to actually hear you speak. You have a nice voice. Richard in New Mexico, hi. I loved hearing your voice too. And I'm so happy to hear that this book was important to you in that way. That really means a lot to me. And you're giving me courage. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much for that. Tom Thompson, I've been seeing your face there. I've never heard your voice. Could you speak?
Hi, Robert.
Hi, Tom. Okay, David, to get to your, as I understand your question, it was what keeps you from just being the way you are, fear of judgment of others? Is that the question?
Yeah, I was just, you know, my initial fears of not knowing, it was a defense mechanism of trying to know. It was an avoidance, you know, of getting to myself. So it's something I just threw around the table, you know, that did anybody have that kind of experience early on in their career and so on?
I'm not sure if I understand. Are you saying that not knowing was a defense mechanism against knowing?
Yeah.
So
Okay, knowing
good
rather
point.
is a defense mechanism from not knowing. Sorry.
Yeah.
You want to know, and you know, that is the drive. Everybody wants to know. What is this not knowing? But you rightly came and said there is peace and freedom in not knowing. So that is something for one to discover. And that was the gist of the conversation. So over to you, Robert.
What you said that was the gist of, and then I didn't get that.
Yeah, you had left the room. You had left the room, and we were discussing fear of the unknown, or fear of not knowing, inherently perceived as a fear. It's a barrier that keeps you from freedom.
Yes. The ordinary life requires us to be competent. It's a requirement. You have to be competent. So you have to know things. When I say I don't know, I don't mean I don't know how to use a camera. I mean, I don't know what any of this really is. None of it. I see a world, but I don't know what that is. And the atomic scientist will say one thing, and the spiritual teacher will say another thing entirely. And they seem quite sure of themselves. And I find myself like the idiot in the middle. I have no idea. That's what I mean when I say I don't know. That's just a personal confession. I really do not know. I don't know what happens when you die. I don't know if something is changeless or not. I don't know if there's a God or not. I don't know how any of this got here. I don't know what it is. I don't know where it's headed. And so all of this spirituality, it just falls on deaf ears. I can't listen to it because it's always not always, 99% of the time, it's stated with the underlying supposition that the person who's speaking knows, and they call it truth with a capital T. Swami so-and-so knows the truth. And it falls on deaf ears. I mean, this guy's just like anyone else. Come on. Where did he get this inside information? And then they say, well, he meditated and it gave him higher reasoning powers. Okay, that may be true, but I don't think that gave him knowledge of what all of this really is. That's a little more than a human brain having increased reasoning powers through concentration and meditation. That's a level to which we primate animals, I say, have no access, and we never will. And so when I arrived at that, I could be wrong. Maybe there's some great master on earth who knows everything, knows truth. I'm not that person, and yet I'm very happy. And so if I'm a happy idiot, I guess I am.
What's amazing to me, what I find humorous that's just come up, that your humility is what has elevated you to a stance of power within the community, and that seems extremely juxtaposed and generates humor. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, well, it's not humility. I just see myself objectively. I'm not practicing humility.
No, the not knowing is
nobody knows. I'm just another human. It's not humility, because I'm not saying I'm this humble person who doesn't know anything. I'm saying I'm a human being.
Yeah, well, that declaration.
None of us knows anything about ultimate matters. We just don't. And when people say they do, I don't believe it. And I don't care what your lineage is, or what titles you have, or how much meditation you've done, or how many hits of acid or ayahuasca, or whatever the credentials you're offering. They don't cut any ice with me. And mine don't either. I have plenty of credentials. I'm actually a cool person. I've done a lot of interesting things, but that didn't make me know truth. Far from it.
Yeah, it's just curious that declaration is what people are drawn to, when in so many traditions that people are drawn to just the opposite.
Well, it's what Richard Elkin was pointing out. I'm not just being humble. I'm saying I'm awake. And as Richard was saying, that's if you want to sell a lot of books, I don't think that's really what you're supposed to say. You're supposed to say, it's like a doctor was awake and he gave all these satsangs and this is what he meant. And then you give your dumbed down interpretation of it and have a lot of workshops and sell books. And that's not my project. In fact, someone asked me the other day, when is the second book coming out? There is no second book. I wrote that, and then now I'm out with the camera again. It's not humility. It's just ordinary humanity, honestly. And the only reason that feels I see that it's refreshing. I get that. I'm not denying that. But what makes it refreshing, I think, is that very few people are saying it and have the intellectual ability to make an argument for it that I happen to have. That's not being communicated. I'm a good writer. I have a good mind. I've read in this field, and I've read a lot of psychology. So I have a background to say, look, this is how I see it. I see it this way. But when I say that, I don't know that. Everything I wrote in my book could be completely wrong. For all I know, that's not humility. It's just honest. And I'm going to add one more thing. If somebody came to me today, and said, Robert, you're completely wrong. There's actually a God, and God is controlling all of this. And if you do such and such practices properly, you will get to hear his voice. And if that person convinced me of it, I would be down there trying to hear that voice. I guarantee you. I don't know. I'm not saying that my way of seeing is the be all and end all. I'm really not saying that. I just don't know any human beings I consider enlightened. I've never met one. I mean enlightened in the sense of knowing truth, capital. I've never met anyone like that. And I've met a lot of interesting people. I know a lot of high-powered spiritual teachers, in fact, and they're not enlightened. And most of them aren't even awake. They're hypnotized. I got to say one more thing while I'm on the subject. I got this amazing letter a few days ago from a teacher like that who bowed to me in the letter. It used that word. It said, I've been on this trip for years. I've been teaching this trip. I can't do it anymore. I'm going to continue giving these satsangs, but they'll be in a different tenor entirely. And I'm bowing to you. Thank you.
Nice calendar.
And you used the word power. See, I didn't get any feeling of power from that at all. I got the feeling that it was so beautiful that I could say, I don't know, well enough so that this guy who was making a living from knowing could not sustain that anymore. To me, that's like, wow, this is great. I wrote this, and it communicated to this other person whose self-interest was interfered with, and still understood. Okay, I've spoken on that. Okay, before we get to the housekeeping, I'd just like to ask if there's anyone here who wants to speak, who hasn't had an opportunity to speak. No? Paul.
Hi, Robert. How are you? Can you hear me?
Is that Paul? Who's speaking? Who is speaking?
Paul Cannell.
Hi, Paul.
Paul Cannell.
I hear you, Paul. Hello, I hear you. I hear you.
I just wanted to connect and say hello and thank you very much for your book. So I've read it twice, and I'm quite speechless. So I wanted to connect with you and to say. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.